Your friend, Larry Johnson, is here with us. Welcome back, Larry.
Friend, I thought it was going to be surrogate father. Okay,
Yeah.
if your dad thing doesn't work out, then I'll step in.
But when you're so close to your father, you say, my friend.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right, I'll let you get away with that. By the way, great shirt. Glad to see we continuing the tradition, trying to bring some light, some joy to a dark, dark world.
Yeah, exactly. Larry, I want to start with what Benjamin Netanyahu said on his interview on 60 Minutes. He mentioned that the United States, the war is not over, which was repeated, by the way, yesterday by Donald Trump. He said, we are not over with the war against Iran, and we have something like 70% of what we had in our mind before this war started. I don't know what does that mean, this 70%, where does it come from? But Benjamin Netanyahu said the same thing. We accomplished a lot. What is the mindset on the part of this 70%, and what do they want to achieve, and what have they achieved so far?
Were you going to play a clip, or just will you jump into it?
No, we can jump in because 60 Minutes doesn't let us to use their clips. They're going to...
Oh, really?
Bring, yeah. They're going to bring our talk down, and right after that, and we have to remove it.
Okay. Well, let's see. What did the United States and Israel accomplish? They killed off one layer of leadership in Iran, and brought together now a leadership group that all fought together, and not directly, but they all fought in the Iran-Iraq War of 1980 to 88. So now you've got a full government of combat veterans who've been to war. They know what war is. So this notion that there's a great division between the so-called moderates and the so-called extremists, that's just a load of Western propaganda. Not true. Instead, you've probably got, I would argue, greater unity within Iran's leadership now than you've had at any time in the past. I'm not sure all of the previous, the ones. It is true. I guess I was told that even the Ayatollah Khamenei, the father, even he fought in the Iran-Iraq War. Of course, he would have been, well into his 40s at that time. What else did they accomplish? Oh, they basically got all of the U.S. military bases in the Gulf region deactivated or destroyed, and they got that accomplished, so that the United States' its ability to sustain its presence in the Gulf is not what it was. They've depleted a large number of essential weapon systems, and to rebuild those, they need to go to China and beg China to give them rare earth minerals in order to reproduce those. They've managed to unite the Iranian people around a government that previously there was opposition to, but now even those who were considered, like the Lego guys, those kids creating the Lego videos, they actually were previously somewhat critical of the government, but now, they are the most effective propaganda arm of the Iranian government. So something we've never ever seen before. Yeah, so great accomplishments by the West. I forgot the most important one. They achieved the shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz, the crippling of the global economy, and the likelihood that the United States and Europe will be faced with serious stagflation. Other than that, they still they haven't done much. So you get my sarcasm throughout this. This is an unmitigated disaster for the United States and Israel. Instead of weakening Iran, they've strengthened Iran, and through it, Iran has strengthened its relations with Russia and China. And in turn, Russia and China have seized this opening, seized the initiative to be moving forward with creating a new international security architecture in the Persian Gulf, one that displaces the United States and leaves the United States weaker, actually.
It seems that Iran response to Trump's proposal was somehow unthinkable on the part of Donald Trump, because he came out here, Larry, and said it totally unacceptable what Iran, had to say to this proposal. And basically, what we've learned from the new proposal, or the response from the Iranians, they're repeating the same points. They're not changing anything with that 10-point plan.
This is so reminiscent of what has gone on with Russia in terms of trying to negotiate with Russia and Trump's. Vladimir Putin laid out Russia's positions very clearly on June 14th, 2024, and they haven't deviated from that at all. Not at all. So here comes Iran and lays out, the four essential. There's a lot of, there are 6 other things, but the 4 critical ones are: lift the sanctions, unfreeze the assets. We're going to control the Strait of Hormuz, and we'll talk later about nuclear enrichment and such. That's it. They haven't changed. And the United States keeps acting like this is something new and dramatic. So I think Iran understands that there is no real viable negotiation with the United States until such time that the economic chaos that is unfolding around the world hits the United States and creates enormous political pressure on Trump. I mean, right now he's only at about 33% support, maybe lower. So God, I saw him yesterday. He put out a Truth Social message about how he's happy with the polls. They're lying to him, absolutely lying to him. So he's got he's going to have to have a wake up call at some point, and it'll only be then that I don't give much chance that negotiations will succeed. This war is not necessarily going to end through negotiations. It's going to end with the reality that the United States has to accept we no longer have the military power that we once thought we did. Oh boy, and that's going to be a shocking revelation, because the average American really believes, man, all we got to do is go in there and drive our battleships into the straits and blow up those Iranians and kick ass. It's just all we got to do is just have enough guts to do it. It's like, guys, you don't understand. Try that and see what happens.
But Larry, the tone in the United States, based on the latest polls, is changing, because 64% of Americans believe that the United States is not winning against Iran in the Middle East.
Correct.
And only 13% believe that the United States is winning.
Yep.
That's totally, against what Donald Trump is trying to picture for us.
Yeah.
With the beautiful AI generated photos that he's putting on his Truth Social account.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of AI generated photos, that AI generated photo of me, come on, dude. I had to look and said, who is that? Yeah, no, but there's that's actually probably a good parallel. The Trump foreign policy it's being operated on artificial intelligence, and if you will, I had an experience with AI. I asked it a particular question to review a particular video, and it came back and said, yes, this video made by so-and-so. And it wasn't. I mean, it was someone else. So I wrote back to the AI. I said, hey, you're wrong. It's this. So it comes back and goes, oh, yeah, my bad. I made a mistake. So once you encounter that, you realize the limits of AI. And, some things are good, but some things are bad. And, Trump's foreign policy is just, it's a mess. There's no coordinated, coherent strategy at all. So, like, he's going over to meet Xi Jinping, right? And so what does the Trump administration do? It announces new sanctions against a Chinese company that took satellite photos that showed the reality of what was going on in the Middle East. Yeah, that I'm sure she's going to be real happy with that. So Trump, you want to find ways that you can make the trip as conflict free as possible. Instead, Trump seems to be heaping up one more contentious issue after another on the agenda.
The guy is totally confusing the foreign policy and diplomacy with what he knows as the deal, some sort of real estate deals that he was dealing with during his lifetime, I would say. And because whenever you put pressure on these countries, they're not gonna cave, they're gonna fight back. This is the main reason that Russia is in its position in the way it is right now. Iran is the way that they're fighting back with the case of the blockade. They're not caving. That's the reason. I don't see China shows that today China is different from what it was, I would say, before 2022. And with the tariff war, we've seen how China hit back at the United States and how they were coming back and fighting the Trump administration. Yeah. I don't know how is it going to help Donald Trump, but it doesn't seem that he's learning anything when it comes to diplomacy and how to deal with how the foreign policy works, and he's continuing with the same sort of attitude.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was. There's the assumption that China is much weaker, or Iran is much weaker than is the case. I came upon a new statistic yesterday, or I'd asked about it, that because I was talking to someone who's making the case about how weak China was. I said, well, let's look at the debt to GDP ratio offhand. And I said, I'm not sure what it is for China, but I suspect it's far worse for the United States. And lo and behold, the numbers were this, that if you look at the central federal government only, sort of the national level government, China's debt to GDP ratio is 29%. What is that of the United States? 123%. And it's probably higher now. Now, if you take in the broader government at all levels, like let's say at the national level, and then at the federal or the state level, whatever, or canton level, and down to cities and such. So take the broader government, all levels. The debt for China is 85% or 88%, and the United States is 140%. So again, the economic strength lies with China. And then if you take total economy-wide debt, like the average citizen, their debt, total debt for China is 302%. For the United States, 720%, or 719. Double, more than double. So my point in all this is the United States is acting like China is an economic basket case, and we're like the guy who's a meth heroin addict going to talk to somebody about their drug addiction, that they have a problem. When they're only they're addicted to smoking cigars. We've got a far more critical problem. And then the way the world economy has changed. Right now, I think we made this point on Friday, that in 2000, Japan had 5 of the top 10 banks in the world. With the number 1 bank in the world at the time was considered Deutsche Bank in Germany, followed by BNP Paribas. Jump ahead now to 2025. China's got the 4 largest banks, followed by 2 American banks. And then you get, I think, the British HSBC, Paribank, BNP Paribas, and Mitsubishi. I think that rounds out the top. Notice that, Japan, 4 of the 5 banks disappeared off that list. And China has taken over. Now, this gets in, there's something called the derivatives market. So we saw this in 2008 with the collapse of the housing market. So a derivative means, let's say that let's do it like a casino. So you go in and you place a bet that you're going to, on roulette, that it's going to hit 12 red. Okay, so the first derivative is, I'm standing in the audience watching you. So you know what? I'm going to bet you that Nima's going to win. And someone else says, oh, I'll take that bet. I'll bet you he's going to lose. And then you got another group of people that are sitting there watching, me watch you. And they go, you know what? I'm going to bet that Larry is right. And someone else said, no, I'm going to bet Larry's wrong. So now they're betting that my prediction about what you're going to do, that my prediction is going to be right or wrong, and then their prediction. And then someone else says, hey, you know what? I'm going to bet that those guys who are betting against Larry, so you see how this builds up. That's the derivative market. What there's a derivative trader named Alex. He has a YouTube channel, Reportify, and he's been involved with the derivatives business for 20 years. And he says that market is $600 to $700 trillion. Basically speculative bets, people leveraged in such a way that if the bets go sideways, they could lose a lot of money. And what's interesting is he identified the top 10 banks that are involved with all this activity. None of them are Chinese. They're all Western banks. So I find that fascinating that the Chinese don't get directly involved with all of this speculative stuff, that they appear to stay much more grounded. So what this means coming into this week's talks with Trump and Xi is that Chinese are in a very, very strong position, and Trump has no trump cards to play.
And the other point that it doesn't seem that Donald Trump is getting it is these countries, the relationship or partnership, whatever we can call it, between Russia and China, between China and Iran, Iran and Russia, they don't interfere in the internal affairs or in what is important for their security. They don't dictate, they don't force each other. They cooperate with each other. This is the whole point, in my opinion, with the case of the partnership or relationship between these countries. And the Trump administration doesn't seem to get it. That's why they may ask, I would say, I don't know, what is your understanding of this visit of China and what he's going to ask?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Whatever he asks, he's got very little leverage. Maybe he wants to see if he can get China to pressure Iran to back off and to stop, and China's not going to do that. I think the U.S. delegation is operating on the assumption that because China is on paper a major importer of oil, that it's under more pressure than the United States with respect to that shortage, and therefore will be looking for a way out. But I put up a piece at sonar21.com last night that lays out, and it's based upon a video done by Kevin Walmsley, who he lives in China. He's actually from the area where I live in Florida, it's Sarasota. And he walks through in detail that actually China is not vulnerable in the way that the West thinks. They're just the opposite. They have a much more stable, predictable path forward. And this is where the Western experts consistently overestimate China's fragility and underestimate China's resiliency. And we're going to see that this week, where Trump thinks he's got some pressure, can leverage China. Except let's look at what China's doing. Not only does it have the top 4 banks in the world, but it's starting to unload U.S. treasuries. It's not buying them, it's getting rid of them, and it's buying up gold and silver. It's setting up an alternative payment system to SWIFT called CIPS, Cross-Border Interbank Payment System. So, and China's reaching out to establish commercial relations with countries around the world, whereas the United States is doing all in its power to try to damage China. Again, if I'm the Chinese, I'm not sure I'd take the meeting with Trump. I'd tell him just go pound sand, because everything that the Trump administration has done has been involving sanctions against China or against different Chinese companies. It's not, we're not sending them a thank you note for anything. And we saw how that backfired early on in the, a year ago with the trade sanctions, the tariffs, that Chinese said, okay, we'll stop buying U.S. soybeans. The soybean market in the United States basically crashed. And because they said, well, we'll buy from Brazil. Brazil makes plenty of soybeans. Exactly what happened. So, Trump's actions hurt American farmers, didn't protect them, and made them more vulnerable. So I see, China knows how to play that game. They are much, much smarter at it than the United States is.
Yeah, he's putting a lot of pressure on the agricultural sector of the United States, not only with the tariffs, Larry, as you've just mentioned, with this case of the Strait of Hormuz. We know how is that influencing the fertilizers.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think, Larry, that the case of the Strait of Hormuz somehow in the mind of the Trump administration is manageable by coordinating or so cooperating or trying to convince the Chinese government together with Europeans? Because on both sides, because I don't know if you heard that United Kingdom, it was reported by Fox News, United Kingdom together with France, they're sending aircraft carrier to the Middle East. Charles de Gaulle is there in the Red Sea, by the way, they said. Yeah, but Macron said, no, we're not going to be there. And I don't trust Macron, whatever he says. But
yeah. So what? Okay, they're sending their aircraft carrier. What's it going to do? I mean, really, it's what can it do? Well, it's got to stay far enough offshore that it doesn't get blown out of the water, number one. If the Europeans start launching strikes on Iranian positions in and around that Strait of Hormuz, Iran, then Europe now becomes part and parcel of that war, and they'll further, Europe is the next domino to fall after Asia. Asia's starting to fall, and then it's going to be Europe will be next on the chopping block, because it's going to be ravaged by the dramatic rise in the price of oil and price of gas and diesel fuel and aviation fuel.
Iranian IRGC said yesterday that they're going to hit every time the United States hits these tankers in the Strait of Hormuz or in the Persian Gulf or outside of the Persian Gulf. They're going to hit American bases together with American warships.
Right.
And how do you see the escalation? Is that gonna? It seems Donald Trump he wants to go to China, and whenever he's gonna be, in my opinion, it seems that he's gonna get back on Friday, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, yeah. So let's see. Right now it is like where I'm. It's 10:30. So in China, it's 10:30, 11:30 at night on the 11th. So in a couple hours, it's going to be the 12th. Donald Trump is going to have to leave. I don't know if he departs today for China, or because you figure, well, what is it, about 16-hour flight, 16-hour flight to Beijing. So let's see, 12 to tonight. Yeah, so if he leaves tonight or maybe first thing tomorrow morning on the 12th, but to get in there, he's there for the 13th, the 14th, and then as you said, he comes home on the 15th. So we're looking at while he is heading to China, I don't think you're going to see any dramatic military moves by the United States against Iran. There's not going to be a new spate of bombings or missile attacks or anything like that. They're trying to keep it contained. And I think Iran is content to sit back and not initiate an attack right now. In fact, I think they were asked by China to not retaliate. When the United States hit the Russian ships or the Iranian ships late last week, Iran very well. I expected Iran was going to retaliate, and they didn't. Now you say they didn't because they were afraid, or they didn't because they didn't have the capability. No, I think they didn't because they'd been asked by China, let's keep this under control, because China and Russia, I think they're making some significant progress on creating a new security architecture for the Persian Gulf, one that will put Saudis and Qataris in concert with Iran in a mutually beneficial collaborative effort, as opposed to this bifurcated conflict-based model that the United States has imposed. The U.S. model is, the security structure erected under the U.S. direction is being destroyed. It's coming down. So now what we're looking at is this new security architecture that the Chinese and Russians are actively working to create.
Larry, Wall Street Journal reported that Donald Trump going to be back. He's going to leave China on Friday. So on Friday, he's going to leave. And then I think next weekend, we're going to have on Saturday and Sunday, we're going to have the new round of war, if that's the plan.
Yeah. Well, is he leaving? So is he leaving Beijing on Friday, Beijing
on
time?
Friday, yeah.
Or is he leaving Friday, U.S. time?
No,
You understand what I mean?
No, the president will land in Beijing on Wednesday and on May 13th and leave on Friday. He's gonna leave China on Friday.
So if he lands in Beijing on the 13th, so tomorrow, Tuesday, in the United States at 6 p.m. Eastern time, that is 6 a.m. on the 13th in China. You see what I'm saying? So the time, taking the time difference. So if he departs China on Friday, the 15th, then he could actually be departing late Thursday. He will get back to the United States on Friday.
Saturday.
Yeah, so he'll get back to the United States on Friday, not Saturday. Yeah. But the odd thing, so he'll leave here on Tuesday to arrive there on Wednesday. Yeah. And so I suspect if he goes out first thing tomorrow morning, then he'll be getting into China somewhere like 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning Chinese time. Have I confused you?
No. That's right, because the time difference between us and China is something like 11 hours. That's why they're ahead of us.
Yeah, it depends on which part of the country. Like they've got.
I'm talking about Beijing, basically.
I think China covers what, 3 time zones or 4?
Yeah, something like that. But Beijing have something between me and Beijing, which is in Brazil, because we have 1 hour ahead of you, and between you in Florida and it's east coast of the United States and Beijing is going to be 12 hours of difference.
Right.
No. And I think, by the way, we're going to have it on Saturday or Sunday if they start to do something.
Yeah, they could wait. Again, we can't rule out that he may get some news and if a threat. You know, the Chinese may make it clear to him if you renew conflict with Iran, you're going to be fighting us. And you know, so there's depends on what messages are delivered. There are some that argue that China doesn't care at all about Iran. It's just, you know, we'll cut it loose in a heartbeat. Boy, they couldn't be more wrong. Iran figures in an important role in the future of China's economic growth. It's another important crossroads for trade, both overland and via railroad, as well as its access to the Indian Ocean.
Did you see the article, Larry, in New York Times? They finally discovered that Iran has the Caspian Sea. They can use it.
Yeah. Yeah, God, somebody looked at a map. Hey, what's that? You know. Yeah, that's why it's so ridiculous listening to the Trump folks, thinking that, oh, well, this blockade, boy, we got Iran bottled up. There's no way they can't. They're cut off. They're isolated. They're not going to get any more trade. And meanwhile, Russia can supply food, whatever material that Iran needs through the Caspian. The Chinese provide it through the railroad line that runs through Tashkent, and the Pakistanis provided over seven overland routes out of Pakistan. It's just, you know, it's just an indictment of the incompetence of the Trump administration.
Larry, from the reports on the part of Iranians, it seems that they know the way to saturate the air defense system of these destroyers. Mm-hmm. They're using in the Persian Gulf, by the way, to fight against Iran with this blockade. The main means of this blockade are these destroyers that they're using, and it seems that Iran has managed to saturate their air defense system, and then they can hit the target, the destroyer.
Yeah, I don't know how the vertical launch system on the destroyers works. And what I mean by that, I don't know if it's capable. So you got like 45, let's say you got 50 missiles forward and then 40 missiles in the back of the ship. And, you know, can they fire them all at once? I mean, you know, at an incoming target, or do they have to fire them one consecutively? I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I suspect it's more the latter than the former. So that means with the drone swarm, you're going to hit some, but not all. And I think the Iranians actually have hit U.S. naval vessels and have damaged them, which is, I think, one other reason why the United States is itself backed off from doing anything too provocative in the Strait of Hormuz.
Netanyahu in 60 Minutes in his interview said that we need to grab and snatch the Iranian nuclear, the enriched uranium in Iran.
Yeah.
At more than 60% enriched uranium in it. And he was asked if he means that militarily they can do it, or he's thinking of the other way. He didn't mention, but it seems to me that he really feels that they can go underground to grab the enriched uranium in Iran. I don't know what is happening in their mind, because he had the same sort of strategy with the so-called regime change in Iran, which is, I think. And just imagine, how can they find enriched uranium in Iran and just...
Well, again, I think there's a lot based upon assumption in the planning for this. Assumption number one is that Iran has consolidated all of the 60% enriched uranium at one location. If I was a military planner, I wouldn't do that. I'd spread it out. I'd get it located in different places. Second, the assumption that Iran has not stepped up security at those sites to detect both inbound attacks and then to resist an attack. I know firsthand from an exercise I worked on, helped write, and then execute from 20 years ago that entailed sending a U.S. Special Operations Forces team into Iran to attack a particular nuclear site. It was called a Hardened Deeply Buried Target, HDBT. And under that scenario, Iran didn't know we were coming, so we had the element of surprise. But even then, it turned out to be, let's call it, a very, very difficult mission, if not a mission impossible. And now that was then where they didn't know, with that scenario, they didn't know we were coming. Now we're looking at one where we've announced it, or at least that's our intention. So I don't think that the Iranian General Staff, the IRGC, that they're sitting around ignoring that. I think instead they've taken measures to both bolster security at those sites.
Yeah. He said, Larry, that I think the mission, the war on Iran, accomplished a great deal. Then he mentions that they couldn't, grab the enriched uranium in Iran, but he says that there are still enrichment sites that need to be dismantled. He's talking about these nuclear facilities and all of that to be dismantled. I don't know what would and who could do that.
Mm-hmm.
And if they couldn't do it by attacking Iran. And the other point is that there is still proxies that Iran supports. He's talking about Hezbollah, Hamas, and Yemenis.
Mm-hmm.
And he says they're still there. An Iranian ballistic missile program, he says, is still intact, and we have to do something about it. The guy is just somehow, he accomplished a lot. On the other hand, he has the same sort of problems that he had before this war started.
Yeah.
And
well, go ahead. Sorry.
What would be the strategy? What would be the move? Because it's getting so boring, in my opinion, if Donald Trump tries to, continue with this sort of plan on the part of Israelis.
Well, what we can come up with logically is not going to be put into place practically. The logic would suggest that the only way to end this fighting is for Israel to concede that the Palestinians deserve a state, a nation, an independent country that is full sovereignty over its people, over its territory, over its resources, and that Israel must get out, must abandon that. Israel's not going to do that. They are locked into a mindset about their country that doesn't have any room for a Palestinian state. So this conflict is going to continue until such time as Israel is no longer capable of sustaining the fight, or the Palestinians are no longer capable of sustaining the fight. What I think the likely outcome is that Israel will fail. And the combination of it's increasingly alienated its support within the United States. And the recent attacks on Christianity and Christians in both Israel and in Lebanon is turning more and more Christians in the United States against Israel. They see it as just a vicious genocidal state. And then to that extent, how many members of Congress will continue to support sending billions of dollars to Israel? That's going to get cut back. So Israel really could be on the outs. And you've got Alistair Crook just recently published, or his wife. What they do is Ashlyn goes in and she reads the Hebrew press and then reprints what is being said in these articles. And it's stunning what has been said of late, that the Israelis have lost their way, and that the attempt to stay in this constant state of war is destroying the country.
Yeah. And the situation in southern part of Lebanon is getting much more complicated for Israelis, as we've seen the latest footage of Hezbollah showing that, hey, they were able to hit, the Iron Dome battery. Here is, Larry, the footage that Hezbollah published. Yeah, that was the end of it.
Yeah.
And they're getting better and better, I think. And as time goes by, I don't know how Israel is going to be able, in terms of the casualties they're experiencing right now. It's unbelievable. We haven't seen this level of casualties on the part of Israelis, because when you go to the southern part of Lebanon, you have to defend your forces. When you are not able to protect them, then they're gonna hit your forces, not only your forces, but also the air defense system you have, as we call it, the Iron Dome. I think the only viable defense system they have right now is the Iron Dome, because we know the shortage on the part of the Patriot system and the THAAD system.
Well, even that doesn't work. We've seen because in that case, if the Iron Dome was so great, why didn't it shoot down that drone? It failed. So let me just read a couple of quotes to you from this piece that Alistair sent out. Senior military commentator Alon Ben David on the moral and disciplinary breakdown permeating the IDF, the near total dysfunction of public systems, and Israel's moral breakdown. This IDF chief Zamir will be required to return the IDF to the fundamentals of order, values, and discipline in a society that's breaking away from all of its norms. Then an article by a major Yitzhak Brick called Illusions of Victory. Israel's political and military echelons lied. Iranian ballistic missiles were not intercepted at all. Sometimes David Sling missiles were launched just to create the appearance of an interception attempt. Then retired Colonel Eldad Shavit, he thought Trump has already tried to sell the American public and the world the image of victory against Iran. However, it has repeatedly become clear that this narrative is unfounded. And then finally, the comment on how the drones are changing the nature of the war, something that Israel is completely unprepared for, despite having watched for the last 4 years what's been going on in Ukraine. So Israel is in trouble, and maybe there's a sort of a metaphor at work here, because here is Bibi Netanyahu. His appearance on 60 Minutes, he looks terrible. He's losing weight. He's becoming more gaunt. He's not the fat body he once was, but that's attributable to the fact that he has prostate cancer, and the cancer's eating away at him. So he may not be alive by the end of this year, which is they'll at least change the political dynamics inside Israel. I'm not sure it'll convince the Israelis to give up their quest to destroy Iran, destroy Hezbollah, destroy Hamas.
Yeah, but Israelis have new methods, Larry, to protect their soldiers in Lebanon. Here is one of them. They're deploying mannequins in this southern part of Lebanon.
Scarecrows.
Larry, I think we all remember that Israel, started attacking, or advancing in the southern part of Lebanon because of the problem they had in the northern part of Israel.
Yeah.
Has that problem resolved, or are they continuing with the same sort of problem?
No, I think Israel will be compelled to withdraw their forces from southern Lebanon in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, because as you rightly point out, they are taking so many casualties now from these drones. In previous incursion into southern Lebanon back in 2006, Israel didn't face off against drones. They had to worry about RPGs being fired at them and some crude missiles. But now it's a game changer what they're up against. So, and it's inflicting severe, significant equipment loss as well as significant casualties. And Israel's not big enough to sustain casualties like this.
Donald Trump posted an attacking Barack Obama. He says Barack Hussein Obama because he feels that if he says that like this, he's somehow insulting the guy.
Yeah.
By putting Hussein in. But Larry, don't you think that the whole concept of making Muslims, demonizing Muslims around the world has changed? I think the tone is changing, not only in the United States, outside of the United States. And the people are witnessing what is the reality behind it. Why do we need to demonize a religion? And what do you make of it, particularly in the United States?
Well, again, it goes back to I'll call it a historical prejudice. It is widely believed, and it's perpetrated within the Christian community, that Muslims hate Christians, and that Muslims are they're sneaky. That they'll come tell you one thing, but they're going to do the exact opposite to you. And that's where, and so as a result, and this goes back to the rise of the Muslim, the emergence of Islam in the 8th century or 7th century, and then it spread throughout the region, culminating in the wars that took place in Europe, in Turkey, in Spain, that beating back the Muslim advance. So they've always been portrayed in this way as violently opposed to Christianity, except when you actually get into the theology, it is the Muslims, and I'm excluding the Sunni, the Wahhabis, those extremists, the Deobandis, they are completely intolerant. But the vast majority of Islam is quite tolerant and celebrates Jesus as a prophet, and they celebrate his mother Mary, as a holy woman. Whereas the Jews, just the opposite. They don't see Jesus as anything. He's a nobody, and Mary's a whore. And so this notion that the one who really is violently opposed to Christianity are the Jews, or the Zionists. I think the Zionists is a better way to phrase it. But and that what this is leading to is this erosion of support for Israel in the United States. It's going to become a critical factor going forward. Israel's becoming more isolated, not less. And the willingness, a few years back for the Gulf Arabs to embrace something like the Abraham Accord. UAE may do that, but nobody else is going to go along.
Do you believe that, because the main point of talking about Obama and Obama administration, Donald Trump was putting out in his latest post, he was somehow saying that Obama sent a lot of money to Iran after that JCPOA. The problem right now for Donald Trump, in my opinion, is that he's not going to get something like JCPOA. And the situation for him, if he gets something with the negotiations with Iran, is going far worse than JCPOA. And he has to ratify that agreement in the Congress, which wasn't the case with the case of JCPOA.
Okay, let's be precise with language. Far worse for whom?
Yeah, for Donald Trump, for the
So
position that he's.
it will be more beneficial for Iran, and I'd encourage all your both listeners and viewers to go look up JCPOA and read what was the actual substance of that agreement. It was pretty onerous on Iran. You know, Iran, in a way, sort of desperately signed on to that because it was up against both China and Russia at the time were willing to back, continued sanctions on Iran. So Iran wanted to get out from under those sanctions. Yeah, so this goes back to the other point you made earlier. I don't see Iran eager to return to a JCPOA framework at all. They're going to assert that we're a sovereign nation. We have the right to enrich uranium as we see fit, but we will remain signatories to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and we will continue to, and we'll set up a regimen that IAEA inspectors can come in periodically to determine that we're not building a nuke and that we have no intention of building a nuke. That would be that'd be sort of the ideal agreement from Iran's standpoint, which the United States wouldn't accept, I don't think. But Iran's in a completely different mood now. There's, like I said, we're a sovereign nation, and we're not going to be treated with disrespect, which, I get that.
Yeah. Laurie, there is a drastic or somehow significant division in GCC countries, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because based on what we've learned from the Iranian media and the calls between the two sides, on one side Iran, on the other side GCC countries, there were 6 phone calls between Iran and Saudi Arabia since the war started, 5 phone calls between Iran and Oman, with 2 meetings, by the way, 5 calls and 2 meetings by Oman, and in Qatar it was 5 phone calls between Iran and Qatar. But when it comes to UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain, you see no phone calls between Iran and Qatar, or between Iran and Kuwait or Bahrain.
Yeah.
Just one single phone call between Iran and UAE. It was the vice president with the head of the Iranian parliament, Ghalibaf. It shows how different are these two sides in the Persian Gulf, within GCC countries. And how do you see with that architecture that you've just mentioned moments ago about Russia and China together with Iran are redefining or somehow reshaping the security structure of the region? And how do you see these players, Oman, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia? Because in my opinion, these are the most important players when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz. Your understanding of that?
Well, that when you look at the real economics of it, probably the most, let's say, diversified commodity economy in the Gulf is that of Qatar, because Qatar dealt with both aluminum exports. They dealt with export of urea, they're the second largest producer in the world of helium. The biggest oil producer is Saudi Arabia. So I see Russia and China focusing first on those two, on the Saudis and Qataris, because Bahrain's so small, as is Kuwait, that they'll have no choice but to either try to go it on their own, which they can't, or accede to the fact, hey, these, Saudi and Qatar are leading the way to, closer working relationship with Iran. I see the Iranians actually being willing to be quite accommodating. That's going to leave UAE isolated, and Iran took the first step 3 days ago, when they hit Fujairah, the port, to basically close off further oil exports out of UAE. Apart from that, UAE is a fantasy. I liken it to I call it a cross between Disneyland and Las Vegas, because it is oriented towards the very wealthy. It's oriented towards sort of a party lifestyle. hookers, were prevalent throughout. They went there to make their money, like as did other members of East Asia or West Asia, to go get a job, serve all these wealthy Westerners that were flocking there. Yeah, this is this security architecture, as described it earlier. The original architecture was creating U.S. military presence to reassure the countries that as long as we're here, nobody's going to attack you. And hey, while we're here, why don't you spend a couple of $100 billion on buying some U.S. treasuries from us, and then you can also buy our military equipment. That'd be great. Well, it really wasn't a great relationship. It put those the Gulf Arabs in sort of a dependence condition. Then comes February 28th, and all of a sudden, the security guarantees from the West go right out the door. West can't protect them at all, and Iran makes that very clear. We can come in and bomb your critical bases and critical infrastructure. So that I think has caused some of these countries, particularly Qatar and Saudi Arabia, to step back and reassess. Do we really need to stay in this kind of tight relationship with Washington? Or here's Russia and China proposing something brand new, and there are financial incentives in it for us. Usually the relationship with the United States requires, hey, you got to give us money. You're not, let us not come in and say, let us show how we can both make money off of this deal, which is how China and Russia approach it.
Yeah. Here is what Donald Trump tweeted 14 years ago, Larry. Gas prices are at crazy levels. Fire Obama. And
yeah,
the guy is just, I don't know why does he need to attack, Obama to make his sort of position right now. But it's a common sort of attitude on his part. Whenever he's talking about the war in Ukraine, he's attacking Joe Biden. And when it comes to Iran, he's attacking Obama because he feels that it puts him in a better position to talk about the two conflicts.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem that anymore anybody believes that the war in Ukraine is, Joe Biden is gone. Nobody's talking about Joe Biden anymore.
Mm-hmm.
President of the United States is Donald Trump, who didn't end the conflict in Ukraine, started a new war in the Middle East. He is badly trapped, Larry. I don't know what would be his, sort of understanding as time goes by, but I don't see Donald Trump getting better or his position getting better. He's sinking deeper.
Well, yeah, he's becoming more erratic. And I think this trip to China is going to be actually, he's hoping they can come out and declare a great victory. I don't see it happening, but we'll see. If he comes out of that and then re-ups the bombings on the renewed attack on Iran, then this war is going to enter another phase that's going to be very, very destructive for both Israel and the United States, and very also damaging to the global economy, making things worse, not better. They're already bad. We haven't seen the full effects that are going to come to pass. So, this is Trump is not in control. That's the best way to look at it. He thinks he is, but he's lost the agenda.
Larry, the behavior of France is somehow strange. Whenever it comes to
wait. Can you give me a situation where the behavior of France has been normal and not strange? Come on, dude.
It's
France is being France, okay. Vive la France. Sorry.
Yeah, but you remember with the case of Ukraine, they said if they could achieve some sort of agreement, they're going to put their troops in Ukraine.
Yeah, how's
know,
that working out?
and they're saying the same thing, by the way.
Yeah.
If the war ends in the Middle East, they're gonna send their aircraft carrier to the Middle East to just protect the peace.
Yeah.
Why do they need?
Well, I was just asking, what exactly are you going to do? Are you going to sell into the Strait of Hormuz so the Iranians can blow the hell out of your ship? Well, that'll send a message. Or they're going to send, you send the aircraft carrier, so you got combat aircraft on board the plane that's going to fly out and attack Iranian positions. Okay, then you've now expanded the war. And also, you got to figure out how are you going to refuel all those aircraft. I guess they'll use the NATO KC-135s as one possible method to offset, trying to provide their own. Yeah, no, this is, again, let's step back and say, what is the purpose? What's the goal? Oh, we want to open the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, explain to me how you do that when to ultimately open the Strait of Hormuz, you have to eliminate the potential of strikes by short-range and intermediate-range ballistic missiles and drones, which are launched from the interior of Iran. They're not out there on the coast. Iran, they do have defenses there on the coast. I'm not saying they don't. And they have robust defenses on the coast that in and of themselves are difficult enough to defeat. But let's assume that you can defeat those, what do you do about this stuff, these launch sites that are, 100, 200 miles inside Iran?
What do we know about, Larry, the ammunition or the missiles and interceptors that Europe is producing for Israel?
They're producing for Israel? With what?
Yeah, I don't know. With Iron Dome, do they produce some sort of missiles for the Iron Dome, for the THAAD, Patriot? Are they able to produce that?
No, I don't think so. And I'm not sure that they got access to the rare earth minerals that are essential for those productions anyway. Yeah, no, Europe's a nobody now. We've watched, they still exist on paper. They still have great historical sites to visit. But they used to be the agenda setter in the 19th century. They were leading in the realm of scientific investigations and in industrializations, producing products. They were stealing great wealth from their colonies around the world. But then comes World War I. It destroys a generation of men and begins the unraveling of the various colonial empires, not just with the Brits, but with the French, with the Germans, with the Dutch. And then World War II sort of seals the fate. And so since then, they're all trying to be relevant. And, the operation that the Brits mounted in, was it 82, 81 at the Falklands, they couldn't do that today. They don't have the ability. So they've lost out on that front. They militarily, they really have nothing to offer. They're no longer a leading source of scientific ideas and research. Their strength as a financial capital, that's eroded as well. There's a lot of focus. This guy, Tom Luongo's always big about, City of London, City of London, City of London. And you know what? Look at the City of London. HSBC is the only bank in the top 10. And it's like number 8 or 9. So it's not the enormous player that everybody's got to pay attention to. And the Chinese banks are going in a whole different direction, again, outside the Western model. So again, Europe is not only a shadow of its former self. It's really, I would argue, it's no longer relevant. It can be a nuisance and it can make threats, but in terms of actual having industrial production to produce anything for Israel, good luck with that.
Yeah. Just before wrapping up, Larry, Netanyahu said they want to be independent. They don't need the United States. They're in the process of getting independent from the United States. They don't need the United States to send them money or anything, any sort of help.
Yeah.
But when he was asked what is the timeline of that, he said in the next decade.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It means that it never happens.
Yeah, he ought to sing the song from Annie. Tomorrow, I love you. Yeah, it's tomorrow. That's going to come to pass. Good luck. Don't hold your breath. Yeah, the U.S.-Israeli relationship, it's going in the opposite direction right now. Growing number of Americans are going, what? Why are they holding us hostage? And Netanyahu makes no bones about it, particularly when he's talking only in Hebrew, thinks the Americans don't understand, and most don't. But when they get the translation, they go, did he really say that? Yes, he did. So this is, we haven't seen the end of this. The markets keep looking for a turnaround. Oh, there's a hope that the light's at the end of the tunnel. Nope. This war is going to go, this situation, closure of the strait, it's going to go on for quite some time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today.
Start the week off on such a cheery note, right? All right. You keep up the guy. I'm amazed. You do your university work and then you do this amazing load with throughout the week. And so you're providing important information.
You too. Thank you, Larry.
All right.
Great pleasure as always.
Later.
See you soon
Bye.
on Friday.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. हेलो 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 चेक चेक हेलो 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 चेक हेलो 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 काट हेलो हेलो चेक हेलो 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 ठीक हेलो 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 चेक
अरे क्यों चढ़े सारा यार इतने दे यार उतर जाओ सारा स्टेज पे सारा थले उतरो नामा का फिर चाहिए
जी हम इसके ऊपर बैठेगा तार मिसिंग करे ना हल्ला लगो बैठ दे तब एक बार ओए पीछे जाओ ओए बच्चा बाहर आ जाओ बाहर जाओ चलो 10 बार बाहर जाओ 2 मिनट में कर एक बार बाहर नहीं चलो नशा बार पीछे आ जाओ बैठो चलो उधर जाओ तार मिसिंग करे मेरा लगती बार बार इसमें तार मिसिंग हाथ थोड़ी हरकत देख नहीं मिस्टेक हुई ना एनु मोड़ लिंगो फिर मेरा हाथ है ना मोड़ने थोड़ा दी थोड़ा ना किसको बेस
मस्तान गया वो पानिया